Youth has daylight sighting near New Pekin year. 1999 SEASON. Summer month, June date, 12 state, Indiana County, Washington County. Location details. From State Route 135, go to Dutch Creek Road and from there, turn on to Falling Creek Road. Nearest town, New Pekin. Nearest road, State Road 135. Observed. My sighting of what I believe to have been a Sasquatch was quite brief, though I did get a decent look. My mother and I were visiting my aunt and I was asked to go out to the car to get my mother's cigarettes. I went outside and walked over to the car and grabbed the cigarettes. When I got back out of the car and went to close the door, I noticed something moving in the field next to my aunt's property. A very large and definitely bipedal animal was walking down the field towards the woods. It walked with a long and sort of slouched gait. It was either covered with really dark brown or black fur and had rather long arms that swung loosely as it moved. It crossed the distance of at least 200 feet in less than 20 seconds. As soon as it reached the woods, I walked into the house and must have sat for at least half an hour trying to process what I'd seen. I was only 13 at the time. Also noticed, in the fields close to the area, I'd noticed several spots where something had bedded down. I just figured it was deer, but I did notice an unpleasant odor around them once or twice. Also, since reading through this and other sites concerning Bigfoot research, I did notice some things in the woods. Groups of large sticks stacked in like a tent fashion. I just thought it was the kids in the area doing it. It could still be that. Other witnesses. No other witnesses. I was only going out to the car to fetch something. Other stories. I did hear that a couple years later some kids said that they were followed by a Bigfoot near the woods just 1/4 of a mile down the road from where I had my sighting. Time and conditions. The time was in the early afternoon and it was a clear, sunny day. Environment. Overgrown field directly off to the right of the road. There was a small grove of trees near the field. Also across the road from these trees there was a few acres of woods with at least one small creek running through them. Follow-up investigation report by BFRO investigator Stan Courtney. I spoke with the witness by phone. The distance was over 100 yards, but the witness stated that he could clearly see the animal. The animal was dark brown in color, 7 feet tall and very heavily built. It appeared to have weighed about 400 pounds. The animal did not turn and look at the witness, but just walked through the field and back into the woods. He was never able to see the face.
Possible vocalizations heard near Fredericksburg year. 2006 SEASON. Summer month. May date, 30th state, Indiana County, Washington County. Location details. Fredericksburg. Nearest town. Nearest larger city New Albany. In nearest road. Highway 150. Observed. I have been reluctant to believe what my mother says because she has always been a little squirrely. It runs in her family. But she told me several years back that my uncle was outside one night drunk as usual. Another reason I was reluctant to believe her. But the story goes that something big and hairy got after him and he crawled up under the pickup truck. They live in southern Indiana in a remote area. They own about 60 acres. That was my grandmother's. The area is rolling hills, some big enough to be considered mountains. It lies northwest of Louisville, Kentucky, and east of Powley Peaks, in a fairly well-known ski resort town. I often wondered about the things they say they have seen and heard in the woods. They live about 3/4 of a mile back off the road in a trailer in the middle of a thick woods with a lot of tall cedar and pine trees, oaks and walnut trees also. The woods is heavy with a lot of undergrowth and a lot of sinkholes and caves. Houses are spaced out in the area with a lot of other heavily wooded properties joining theirs. Years ago, my grandmother didn't know what to call it, but she reported to us of being chased back the lane by 2 adults, a larger adult and a smaller adult and 2 young ones. My siblings have heard howls but not really seen anything. My brother was killed in an automobile accident on Memorial Day and we went up to help them make funeral arrangements on May 30th, 2006. I was on my way to the truck. It was probably between 11 p.m. and midnight. My kids and husband were already in the truck. We all had colds and my son was coughing, so my daughter and my husband did not hear it. It was a howl that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I am a country girl. I've heard a coyote, dog and wolf howl before, and this wasn't any of those. I listened to the howls on your website and that is exactly what I heard, only this one was a little higher pitched, like it may have been a younger one. My husband said all he could hear was my son coughing. I didn't want to be the only one who heard it. I told my sister the next day and she said yes, I've heard it many times before. You don't have to prove to me that they exist, I just want to know if that is what is in their woods. I am concerned for my parents' safety. They are both disabled and don't need to be back there alone, but they are too stubborn to sell it and get closer to town, and when they are gone, that land will go to us, and I don't intend on sharing it with old Harry. He's going to have to pack his family and move on. I'd like to have proof to show the world that yes, they do exist. Edited. Other witnesses. Several over the years. Grandmother who is now in nursing home with Alzheimer's, my mother. My uncle, my dad doesn't talk much, so I'm not sure what experience he's had. I only heard the one howl, but my sister has heard it many times. Other stories. I would like to know if any other people from this area have heard or seen anything. But the thing is, it is a low-income rural area with a lot of druggies and drunks and your basic scum of the earth type people that you either may not trust or would have trouble believing. There are a few reputable people in the area, but I don't live there and have the time to try to find much of anything out. Time and conditions. 11 p.m. to midnight, pitch black, slight fingernail moon, hot muggy environment. A lot of tall trees, oaks, hickory and others, heavy undergrowth, a lot of cedar and pine, very hilly area, land not real good for farming, so it's mostly either grown up wooded or pasture. Follow-up investigation report by BFRO investigator Eric Lester. I spoke to the witness about what she experienced. When she heard the howl, she was outside of her truck and heard what at first sounded like an ambulance. She eventually realized she was not hearing an ambulance, but a howl. She compared it to the Ohio howl found on the website, but said it was higher pitched and lasted a little longer. It also sounded as if was far away. Her family was in their truck at the time and could not hear it. She said it isn't similar to anything she's ever heard before. The story she heard from her grandmother was when she was young, so no details were obtained at the time. She also stated that other members of her family have heard howls like the one she heard. Her sister has heard them on multiple occasions, and her daughter has heard something she said was like the dinosaurs in the movies. The area where this occurred is close to a mile down a rural dirt road, surrounded by thick woods on all sides. There is some farmland in the area, and lots of natural caves. The Blue River runs through Fredericksburg, which is located between Hoosier National Forest and Clark State Forest.
Recent knocks heard in daylight near Spurgeon Hollow Lake, 10 miles N of Salem, year 2020 season, summer month, June date, 12th state, Indiana County, Washington County. Location details. The Spurgeon Hollow Trail is off of Delaney Park Road, a few miles east of State Road 135 north from Salem, in. Then the trailhead is about half a mile off Delaney Park Road, nearest town, Salem nearest road, Delaney Park Road. Observed. My fiancé and I decided to hike the Spurgeon Hollow Loop Trail in Washington County, Indiana. The trail is a 9-mile loop starting at Spurgeon Hollow Lake, looping north towards Delaney Creek State Park, then continuing east and south connecting to the Knobston Trail. The Knobston Trail is rugged state-maintained trail that winds approximately 60 miles through the southern Indiana hills. The trail then turns west, diverging from the Knobston Trail to return to the trailhead at Spurgeon Hollow Lake. The Spurgeon Hollow Trail is situated in the middle of the Washington-Jackson State Forest. The Spurgeon Hollow Trailhead is reached from a county road a few miles off State Highway 135, then a half mile off the county road down a dirt, gravel lane crossing through a couple of dry stream beds. We arrived around 1:30 p.m. on Friday, June 12, 2020. It was a sunny day with low humidity in the upper 70s, which is why we chose to hike this day. From the trailhead, the path continues for a quarter mile or so and parallels the lake on your right and steep, thickly wooded hills on your left. At this point, the trail splits to begin the loop. You can go left up the steep hillside, several hundred feet climb, or continue on your right along the lake. On this initial trailhead path, I heard two distinct knocks. We had gone most of the quarter mile. I heard the first sharp knock. Then a second or two later, the second knock. Both in the same general area, up the steep slope to the left. I stopped at the looked, but could not see anything because of the dense vegetation. There was no other sound. The knocks were sharp and moderately loud. They sounded like the report of a baseball coming off a bat. There were no other people on the trail. No one at the lake. My fiancée stopped and looked back at me. I asked her if she heard those knocks. She of course made fun of me and said, "Ooh, it's a squatch." She hadn't heard anything. We continued on. We took the left trail up the steep slopes and for the next 6 miles went up and down steep inclines and declines. Crossed several creeks. Then about 3 hours later, the trail turned left diverging from the Knobston Trail heading back towards Spurgeon Hollow Lake. The trail at this point parallels a large creek bed at the bottom of hills. We had gone a mile or so, about 2+ miles to go to reach the trailhead. There was a knock. A very loud, very sharp knock. We both stopped dead. My fiancée's eyes were wide as saucers. She said, "That was loud." I laughed and said, "So what do you think that was?" The knock sounded again like the crack of a baseball coming off a bat. A huge baseball and a huge bat. It came from the steep hilltop above us. We scanned the ridgeline, but could not see much. It was just too thick. I heard the brief sound of something moving in the brush up high, but that was it. My fiancée said, "Let's go." I asked her, "Don't you want to stay and see if something else happens?" She said, "No, I want to go." So we started walking. A couple of times I would stop and scan the hills. She would say, "Just keep walking." We returned to trailhead with no further incident. Also noticed, the second knock was extremely loud and clear. Other witnesses, my fiancé and I. We were hiking the trail. Other stories. No, I have not heard of any other incidents in this area. Time and conditions. First knocks were heard about 1:30 p.m. and the second knock was heard about 4:30 p.m. It was sunny. Darker in the forest of course. Low humidity. High 70s. Environment, hardwood forest. Lots of thicket. First knock occurred on hillside next to Spurgeon Hollow Lake. Second knock was on a hillside along a creek bottom leading back to Spurgeon Hollow Lake.